Thank you for joining me today on the Who God Says podcast. My name is Ty Chandra. I am your host and Kingdom Ambassador. Hi, hi, hi. Today we have a very special guest. We're going to be talking about the power of love, how to recognize it and transition so that love wins and anger loses. And with us today, we have a international best-selling author of the Role of Love book, and there's a journal, and it's also a game. Mr. Paul Zolman, welcome.
Thank you, Ty Chandra. So glad to be with you today.
Yay, I'm so excited.
I'm
How are
excited.
you?
I'm doing well. Looking forward
Me,
to a very fun podcast.
yes. So, how did you come up with the name of your book, Role of Love?
When I was studying, when I was trying to get rid of anger, I had a kind of a negative comment that I was saying to myself, and I realized it was negative after it wasn't going away. I was saying, I don't want to be angry. It was like a double negative thing there. And double negatives only work in math. When you're multiplying two negative numbers together, it becomes a positive. When you're saying it in relationships, it doesn't work. And so I started reading the five love languages, and I realized that I read it 4 or 5 times. I read through the book, but the book wasn't coming through me. In fact, I wasn't getting that role, ROLE, inside me. And seemed like it was just outside of me. All those principles were outside of me. They were all circumstantial, something that seemed unreachable. But I wanted something that would change me within. So I thought of the word role. But then I thought of making it a game. And that's how I actually came up with the game of putting my own icons on a die and creating what I call the Role of Love. There, you can see on the camera, there's two hands holding together, making a heart, and there's a conversation flowered at the heart. So that's representative of the words. And there's time, the hand holding an hourglass. This would be service, the hand holding a platter. You've got touch, two hands touching one another, and then the last one is gifts, a hand holding a gift. Five love languages, six sides on the die. The last side of the die is actually surprise me. So I wanted to do it a play on words, Taishandra. So ROLL again is outside of you. That's what you do with the dice. You roll just two instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you send out or give away all day that day. You're watching for people to light up. And that's kind of the role, ROLE, that you take of helping people have a better day, helping them light up. When they have a better day, they're going to spread that to their circles of influence. If you send anger out, in contrast, you send angry words out, you make somebody have a bad day, they're also going to spread that misery to one another. But I didn't want that. I think that I'd had enough of that. People around me throughout my life had enough of that. I thought this is really a time for change. And I realized that I only have control over love that I give away and responding when it comes my way. I can't bid somebody to love me. And so I wanted to stay in my lane. And that again, it comes back to ROLE, role. That's my role, staying in my lane. I found, Taishandra, that when I was uh, thinking about somebody and what they're doing wrong and having an opinion about that, I might get annoyed. And then I'd be annoyed again. And then I'd be annoyed again. And then I'd be annoyed again. And then I'd flash. And you'd never know when I was at the top of that annoyance level. It could be in public, and it could be embarrassing, very embarrassing in public to flash like that. And then it happened in the family too. And I credit the demise of my first marriage to that flashing of the anchor. Now, instead of doing that, I stay in my own lane, stay in my role, and then just send love out. I'm just watching for people that light up, help them have a happier day. That's how the name came to be.
Taking on that accountability, a lot of people don't do that. That's awesome. That's something that people can put. It can be a practical thing for people to do. I love how you have the dice, and it's something that they can actually do every day and make it a goal. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And as far as accountability goes, I think that's really a great word. It took me until about age 35 to stop blaming my father for the abusive childhood that I had, to stop blaming him for those being annoyed, and been flashing those flashes, and the awkwardness in social settings. If you've ever seen anybody get angry in a social setting in a group of people, you feel like, ooh, it kind of repels you. You don't want to be associated with that person. In fact, if you came with that person, you kind of wander off to the other side of the room while they're getting angry. You don't want to be even near that person at that time. And so I found that happening, and I was blaming my father for all that sort of thing. And while I'm blaming my father for that, I realize that blame is a funny thing. If you can blame someone for your problem, you don't have to change. You don't have to do anything. It's their fault. It's their problem. They got to change. And then it kind of pass it off so that you don't have to do anything about your own life. You think you're okay, even though you're getting angry. You think you're okay, even though you might be getting upset at somebody. It's really not a good life. You got to take responsibility. And at age 35, I felt like I needed to take that responsibility. My father had been dead 7 years already. He couldn't even
Wow.
defend himself. And
Right.
so it was time. It was absolute time to take responsibility. Hopefully, people can take it a lot earlier than age 35.
Yeah. People hold on to a lot of things and they don't even understand that they're holding it. Um, Most of the time when they're holding anger and trauma, they try to push it under the rug and disguise it as something else. So they're not necessarily aware that they're holding on to it. But I want to ask you, when did you recognize that you were abused as a child? Like, when did you know that that was something that wasn't okay? Like, when did the light bulb go off and say, hey, what is this that's going on? Because this is not normal.
Well, I think that I recognize it probably early on that I probably should not have bruises on my rear end that lasted for 3 weeks. That was probably an inordinate amount of beating, an inordinate amount of the discipline was way too harsh. In fact, I remember being disciplined. My father was a truck driver. He'd be gone through the week, be home on Fridays. He'd date my mother every single Friday. I loved that about him. But the date was always happened at the Maverick Bar. It always happened with alcohol. And so I'm number 10 of 11 children. And so most of them are brothers. I'm kind of a thorn between two roses. I have an older sister and a younger sister. All the rest are boys. And so it's like puppies, Taishandra. When puppies play, they're swat at each other and they wrestle and they do this. And my brothers, when would do that, they break arms and they break their legs and things that would annoy my father. They never broke any of my bones, but it would be annoying to my father because, oh no, more medical bills, and just it was just being really annoying that they would do that type of thing. So by the time my mother's telling him, I'm imagining this, I never was there, but when couples get together after an absence, say, well, how was your week? How was your week? And my mother's telling about all the children and all the things that did. Imagine she started at the oldest, and by the time she got to number 10, my dad's really, really upset. He's had all these annoyances. He's ready to blow. And so I get it. I get it. I get the belt. I get the spanking. I get everything for all what my brothers did. I don't know if they ever got anything, but my my father came home pretty angry many times that way. And so Saturday either was a happy day if he wasn't angry, or a very sad day if he was angry. And it was just very, very difficult time that way. So it was probably in my childhood when I recognized that I was being abused. I didn't realize the extent of it though until I had slapped my own child one time. And I felt so bad about that I turned myself into the Department of protective services. I just felt bad about it. I called them on my way to work, and I worked 40 miles away. So on my commute, I called and left a message. They weren't there yet. It was like 7:30 in the morning. They weren't there. So I left a message on the answering machine. Well, that turned into a confession that they had on the answering machine. They booked me for child abuse because I confessed. All I was asking for was I need help. I don't want to be angry. So they sentenced me to 18 months probation and a 1 year long anger management course. And when I went through that anger management course, Taishandra, I found out there were about 13 different specific areas of abuse, and within that, subsets of each one. I found that my family and my parents mostly had taught us about 6 or 7 of those abuses, and I did not know that they were abusive. So that was another discovery for me, that if you learn what that wheel of misfortune is or what that wheel of abuse is, when you learn that it's abuse and they have that realization, oh, that's abusive, you're going to absolutely stop from that. And what I found myself doing, Taishandra, is that I would think of, well, if that's abusive, what's the opposite behavior? What is the opposite thing that I could do? The other day I was walking and I found a stick that kind of helped me understand what the spectrum would be. This stick that I found is more like a walking stick, doesn't have any bark on it at all. One side of the stick is just really, really nice. And then you get to the other side of the stick, it says some little sharp points where maybe there was a twig or something, and it's kind of naughty.
Mm-hmm.
I call this my naughty and nice stick. I'm sure Taishandra, I'm sure Santa Claus has a stick just like that.
Yep.
That's how you get your presents. I didn't think, I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's how you get your presents at Christmas time. So the naughty and nice stick, I've realized that anger is really on that naughty side of the stick, and that anger has its own culture, has its own vocabulary, has its own humor. It's really a culture, its own sentences, its own smack talk, its own put downs. Everything like that is on the angry side of the stick. On the nice side of the stick would be the love languages and the loving humor, kindness, that is soft, that you feel it's funny, but it's not really pointed towards you. And it's just really kind of a soft culture. I realized that I was on the angry side of the stick when I realized what those abusive things were. And I had to run like crazy. I had to really figure out what's the opposite and what is the quality that I want to be. Not anymore, no more I was saying that I don't want to be angry. I was saying I want to be loving. I want to be kind. I want to be thoughtful. I want to be intentional about loving.
Yeah. So would you say that when you spanked your child, would you say that that was the turning point for you to transition into more loving relationship? That was the how you say it, hitting the nail on the head where it's like everything else is over. I have to do something. Or was it after you went through the anger management and you're like the light bulb started coming on and it's like, okay, something has to change.
Well, excuse me. I feel like it was that there were different times that I had different paradigm shifts. Like when I'm 35, I had that paradigm shift of that I'm responsible. Now that I'm responsible, now I don't no, I don't want to be angry. I want to be loving. I want to be more kind. And I think that those transitions, you have to work through that a little bit that way. And I think that probably the best thing that happened was when I realized that the 5 love languages were Dr. Gary Chapman. He was a reverend and had written the book with that in mind. And he said that the 5 love language actually reconcile to Jesus Christ and the life that Jesus Christ lived. That we have his words, we love his words. He spent time with people. He served people. He had the gifts of the Spirit. He touched people's eyes so that they could see, and his ears so that they could hear. So all 5 love languages actually were part of the life of Jesus Christ. But as I'm practicing this, Taishandra, what I'm finding out is that these are the basics. These are absolutely the basics. Because of course Jesus had higher levels of love too. He had what we call compassion. He had empathy. And I think that just like I was stacking those annoyances on top of one another and becoming angry, I think that if you stack these acts of love one on top of another, you actually get to the point where you are compassionate.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you have that empathy, you have that heart to forgive, you have the latitude to allow people to make mistakes without jumping on that mistake, without magnifying that mistake. Instead, you want to magnify or focus largely on the right things that people do. What is it that is good about that person? What can I love about that person? And as you change your focus from what's wrong with that person, which would annoy you, and it would be one of those annoyances and one of those things that stack up, you can be annoyed at everything everybody else does, but that's not your lane. That's not your role. That's out of your lane. Stay within your role, stack up those loving deeds, those loving kindnesses that you're sending out, stack it up, then have compassion, then develop that compassion. I think adversity also is another thing that really helps us develop that compassion, develop those higher levels. You take a look at this picture right behind me. There's a picture of a sunrise, and every the very best sunrises and the very best sunsets all have clouds. We're going to have clouds in our life. We're going to have things that we need to overcome. We're going to have to go through it. Sometimes those clouds will form together and it'll be actually a storm. We'll have those storms in our life. But when we come out of that storm, then we can see the rainbow. Then we can see the good parts of what did I learn through that cloud? How can I apply these things to my life? And I think God will be with us. That's the promise. The promise of the rainbow was a promise made to Noah that the floods wouldn't cover the earth. That God has promises for us that way too. We work through these trials, we're going to become stronger, we're going to be better.
Yeah. I think it's great that you pointed that out. A lot of times people don't look at the good in people or the good that they can pull out of people. They only look at the surface, what they don't like about them, what they can judge them for. And I think that was a great point that you pointed that out. Like if we could actually just find something good or something that they're good at. You may not necessarily like them, but they may be good at something. And you can pull that out of them.
Absolutely.
I
I'm
think that's
trying,
all.
I'm trying to get this into the classrooms as well, Tashandra, and I do have a test school that's doing it. So you can imagine, let's teach these children how to love, teach them how to look for the good in people. The media teaches us to watch for the
Yes.
bad, watch for the mistakes that people and blow it up big because it makes it bigger than life. But if we put the die in a classroom, the teacher will roll the die at the beginning of the day. It takes 2 seconds to roll the die, maybe 30 seconds for the teacher to say, class, we're watching for these kind of opportunities. This type of behavior is what this looks like today. Let it go. At the end of the day, I've talked to several teachers worldwide, Tashandra, and these teachers, all of them say, without any exceptions, all of them say that the last 10 to 15 minutes of the day is probably the worst part of the day for them because the kids are anxious.
Hmm.
They're ready to go. They've been there all day. They want to get out of there. They don't want to get in trouble. If they get in trouble, or even if they do something bad, is the teacher going to stay after school with them? The teacher wants to go too. At this particular time of the day, what I've prepared for them to do is they can make a journal entry of what they rolled for the day, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, than what they did about those opportunities. Now we've got a system that the kids are being learning to be responsible for their actions at school. They're rolling the die at the beginning of the day. They're journalizing at the end of the day. They
It's all.
know they know that throughout the day they're going to have to report what they did at the end of the day. Does a couple of things. One thing for the parents and for the child, it becomes a love journal for that child. So the teacher just checks whether they did it or not, sends it home with the child, and then the parent will hold it for in a file for the full remainder of the year. At the end of the year, that parent can bind that book and it becomes a love journal for that first grader, a love journal for that third grader, a love journal for that fifth grader. We're doing it in elementary school right now as a test, and it's working very well. There are a few kids that are really catching on with it. And in the test school, what happens, I've got a Yogurt Land franchisee that is actually collaborating with me. And if they'll do the journal for 15 days in a month, they'll get 5 ounces of yogurt for free.
Awesome. Great
So,
incentive.
so if they'll do it for 25 days, the habit forms between 21 and 28 days. So right in the middle of that, they'll do it for 25 days and actually form a habit of watching for the good in other people, watching for opportunities to love, and sending that love out, doing something about it. If they'll do that journal entry for 25 days, they'll give them 10 ounces of yogurt for free. Great incentive that's going on. It's working well. There's a couple of kids that are really going at it, wanting that yogurt, obviously, but they're going to reap the benefits of having a love journal.
Hi everyone! Join the Kingdom Fanatics community. Get exclusive content, green room access with our guests, and more. Visit our website at whogodsays.com. Like and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate your love and support. To find all information on joining our community, being a guest on the show, donating on our PayPal donation page, and more, visit us at whogodsays.com. Now back to the show.
Just think back 10 years or 20 years. If you would have had a journal like that from your first grade, and you remember that teacher from the first grade and all the things that you love from first grade, is something that you could share with your children or your grandchildren too. I'd absolutely love something like that. I do absolutely remember a few teachers like that. I remember Mrs. Rogers, my very first grade teacher, and I don't know why I remember her name so much. She was kind of old and crotchety, but I just remembered feeling loved in her classroom. I remember feeling those feelings. I would have loved to have a little journal about that. Why did I feel those feelings? Why do I still remember that name so many years after the fact? Why do I remember Mrs. Robbins from sixth grade? Why do I remember these names of these teachers I had and at that time? And I would have loved to have a journal that would have helped me understand, oh, that's why I remember. I remember that loving kindness that she did. And I remember giving that to Johnny or Susie. I remember trying to follow her example of being a loving person. I remember her teaching me responsibility to be responsible for my own actions. I remember, and just as you remember those things, hopefully you build that basis of these basics, these 5 love language basics. You build that basic foundation of love that's going to carry through your middle school years, the high school years, and then to college, and then throughout your career, throughout your life.
That is so awesome. That is awesome. I love that. I love that you've taken this into schools. I actually just had something come across my phone, like a news feed yesterday, and there's a company that's going into the schools and talking to kids in elementary about the freedom of choice in their lifestyle. And I kind of got upset about that.
Mm.
I really got upset about that because I felt like I don't think that the basic curriculum that's already been taught in school is up to par with what people need to actually live and go get jobs and be in the work world.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're introducing something else to these young kids that has absolutely nothing to do with their well-being. And I feel like it's something that's meant to distract them into something totally, something else. But by you bringing in something that's conformed in love, I admire you for that. That is amazing. And yes, they definitely need this. Everyone needs this. Everyone needs to know how to properly love outside of yourself. Because most of the time when people think about love, they think about relationships, and then they think about, well, what am I getting?
Yeah.
What
It's
am
not
I
like,
getting?
yeah, it's not. And I wanted to clarify that, Tashandra. I think that you brought up a really important point, that this is not about reciprocity. It's not about giving away in expectation of getting it back. This is about giving away without any expectation of coming back, but trusting what Jesus taught, the law of the harvest, that you plant that seed, you can expect to harvest the seed. Or put another way, it's karma. It's what you send out's coming back to you. Or you put it another way, the law of attraction. Any one of those laws actually apply here. We send it out without any expectation of coming back, trusting but knowing that's coming back. It's a boomerang all by itself. Just like anger is a boomerang, but you're going to get that boomerang right back. Anger, you're going to get, you send it out, it'll come back 10 times worse than you sent it out. So just be careful. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to make an investment like that? Everybody likes making a little investment, just to put in a tiny little bit and get a lot back. This is one of those things that actually works. You put in a little bit of time to roll the die at the beginning of the day. These are all pictures on the die. They're all pictures, and so the pictures will help you remind you all day long what you're supposed to be doing all day that day. And because of that, reminder, you're going to be on track to just kind of keep that mindset. It's going to help you develop that loving mindset and just focus on it. It's intentional. It's something that you're doing on purpose. You're loving on purpose and loving with purpose.
I love your whole concept, and the main focus, well, having focus on children and bringing it into the schools. Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big mind blowing thing. That's gets those kids open to understanding love and also receiving love. Like you said, you didn't necessarily have a steady thing when you understood what love was. You understood what the anger was, and
Yeah.
that a lot of time, a lot of kids, they don't know. They don't know if what I'm receiving at home is actually love, or is it just a form of anger? Is it a form of contentment? They don't really know. And so when you open their eyes to things, like, they're very smart. We don't give them a lot of
Yeah.
credit. They're very smart, and they pick up on things really quickly. So we don't give kids a lot of credit. By knowing that they pick up things quickly, we need to introduce them to things that would better them and help them, instead of the things that we think, oh, they just entertain them for the time being so we can do whatever we need to do, and introduce them to those distractions that is not good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is awesome. I'm happy with some of my kids. I have 4 kids.
Oh, nice. Good for you.
4. Yeah. The oldest just made 18 and the youngest is 6. So
Oh my goodness, you look way young for having 4 children, especially an 18-year-old.
yes, yes, she just made 18 on the 10th of
Oh
September.
wow. Wow.
Yes. I have a big girl now.
That's amazing.
Oh, God. But I've always tried to teach my kids love in the capacity that I could, because I was always a different child. We were raised by my dad. So my dad was a single working parent. And when I was young, I saw his love, but it wasn't in a way that I would see other people, kids getting love. Like, my dad love is, he's a protector, he's a provider. So if he'll cook. He loves to cook. So he cooks for us, he cooks for the neighborhood. And then he's like a watchful person. He watches over everybody. Like, he protects everybody in the neighborhood. That was his love. And when I saw other people, like one of my friends when I was growing up in school, her mom was the sit down and let's talk about it type love. Let me hug you type love. Give her a kiss before we walk to school in the morning. I'm like, why your mama kissing on you? You know? So it was a different type of love. But I think that this is so important because there are different types of love, but it's just understanding that and pulling that in and then being able to push it out for the for the person that you're interacting with. Because again, love is different for different people. So this is absolutely amazing.
This is a great way to get to know the different types of love too. You know, what I found is that after giving the love away for 30 days, you can better see it coming your way. Most people can only react to their primary love language. Like your father was a service kind of guy. He would just make sure everybody's protected, everybody's kept safe in the neighborhood. That was the service he was offering. And then your friend's mother being the touch type of person, wanting that kiss before she sent her daughter off to school. And everybody has that primary love language, and that's the theory that Dr. Chapman had. And I don't want to discount that at all. But what this does for you is helps you learn all 5 love languages, so you can see it coming your way. It may not be your primary love language, but you can say, "Oh, they're loving on me. It's not my primary love language, but I can respond because I know they're sending love my way." And it changes the whole communication dynamics that way, that now you become multilingual in all the love language. You can see it coming your way no matter what language it might be.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Everybody wants to be multilingual.
Yeah, I do. I mean, for me, recognizing the love languages was hard for me because I wasn't an affectionate person. I wasn't the touchy feely person. So in my relationship, I would be standoffish because I'm like, don't touch me. Like, why are you touching me so much? So, and as I've grown, I've come to understand that even though it's the way that they want to be loved or the way that they show love, there was nothing wrong with that. But it took me a while. It took me a while to get to that point to where I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is just how they show their love. Like, it took me a long time to really get that understanding. Because if you didn't love the way I love, I thought something was wrong with you. I thought you.
And I think we all have that myopic point of view that we only can see what we think love is, and we may discount all the other four love languages that they might not look like love to us. This changes the whole game. It just changes the whole atmosphere. Become that multilingual, the love language linguist. It's a sexy title. I know you want it. Everybody wants that title. You can get it after 30 days of doing this.
Awesome. So I want to ask you, when a person has been exposed to like abuse and trauma, and they bury that instead of dealing with it, how would you say that it affects their relationships, and not just like personal relationships, but like at work, at school, with friends?
Well, I think that if you can blame someone else for things, you don't have to change. And it's almost like you're shielding that from other people. You're not being vulnerable. You're not even acknowledging it yourself. And when you cover it like that and try to shield that from other people and try to not be that vulnerable person, it's really going to hurt you in the long run because you're not going to overcome it. What I found, Taishandra, is that on the spectrum of the stick, on the nice side versus the naughty side of the stick, that if you can find out where you are on the spectrum, then you got 3 choices. You can stay the same and blame people, which doesn't help you a bit. You can become more angry, or you can go the other way and become more loving. When you have that self-actualizing moment and really are honest with yourself, then and then only then is the time that you can make goals to go the other direction, go the direction that you want to go. If you keep hiding that, it's not going to help you a bit. So I would suggest if you need therapy, try to get therapy. If you need a good friend, start with a good friend. Or if you've got I'm sure most people will have a good friend that they can talk to, and just try to talk through it. Try to get that out in the open and try to acknowledge that. Once you acknowledge and do that self-actualization that I'm talking about, once you have that done, then is when you can set goals. Where do I want to go? What role do I want to have? What role does love have in my life?
Now, I know you brought up therapy. If you blame someone for your trauma or your hurt that you buried, do you think that that's important for them to like address that and forgive that person or forgive the circumstances, or do you think that they can just counteract and begin to walk on a different path?
Well, I think there's a lot of dynamics in what you just said. If a person is blaming you for something, again, they're the person that they think they don't have to change. But I came to a realization that even though there were other circumstances in my marriage of 23 and a half years that fell apart, partly I take responsibility for part of that of being the anger that I had and expressing that anger in that way. And if people take some responsibility instead of blaming people, instead of blaming others, then is the time that they can have that forgiveness. Instead, forgiveness is a better choice instead of blaming. But remember that that's the stacking of love. You stack these incidences of love, and then you get to that higher law of forgiveness. It's not going to come right away. It's going to be after these little things that happen that are loving and they're stacking up. Then it's a bridge to get you to that forgiveness. Just think of that. Think of intimacy, for example. It's not going to happen just because you want intimacy. That's more lust than anything else. But you just build, you build, you build, you build. It's kind things that happen throughout the day or throughout the week or whatever it is. Those things build up to that higher level of love, the ultimate intimacy. And it's the same thing with forgiveness. You've got to build up to that and build it with kindness. Blame doesn't have a part in that. If you're blaming someone, you're still in that blame game and you're still in that victim mentality. That victim mentality is not going to get you anywhere.
Absolutely. I agree. Totally agree. I do want to ask, this is a question that I ask everyone. What do you believe is your purpose? And how did you accept that?
What is my purpose?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I knew that I had a lot of purpose growing up. I was looking for it, and I think that as I've discovered what works for me, I thought this might work for someone else too. So I created the die so that I could overcome anger. And I thought, well, a lot of people are having rage problems. A lot of people are having this problem with anger driving. They're having anger at schools. They're having anger everywhere. Maybe this might work for them too. And as I realized that I was given this gift from God, I was given this gift, and I need to share that gift. And as we share our gifts, that is anybody's purpose. Once we understand that this came from God, once we understand whatever it is, whatever our talent is, whatever our, and maybe your talent is Taishandra, maybe it's having podcasts or being a host on a podcast, whatever that gift is, I feel like we've got an obligation to share that gift with others, to try to help others on their way. And so that's kind of how I come to this purpose of sharing the love. It doesn't make me any money, and it really it hasn't made me any money yet. I spent a lot of money doing it, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Something that I think that what the world needs now is something I'm willing to fund. I'm looking in the future. I'll look to create a nonprofit so that some of the schools, so we can roll this out a whole lot faster. Pardon the pun of roll. We're rolling the die. We're rolling the love. We'll roll this out to the schools a whole lot faster if we had some corporate sponsors, some people that are also interested to tamp down misbehavior in the world and make it a more loving world.
That is so, I think that is so awesome. Yeah, you are absolutely right. We are meant to share our gifts with the world. Um, and yeah, we all have many different gifts. Uh, this for me is something very, very new, and it didn't even come from me. So I absolutely know that this is something that God wanted me to share with the world. So you're absolutely right. Whatever it is, whatever your purpose is, whatever your gifts are, it's meant to be shared. And a lot of time people do look for, oh, I'm good at this. Is it going to make me money?
Yeah.
Like the first thing that people look for. I'm good at this. Is it going to make me money? So, but purpose is not about you. Purpose is about others. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sharing your gifts is your purpose. That is so. Thank you, Mr. Paul Zolman, for being with us today. Thank you for telling us about your book and your journal and the roll of the die. Where can we get the book, the journal, and the die? Where can we find it?
So right now, Taishandra, thank you for that question. Right now, it's on special. It's a whole lot less than even one therapy session. And what this does, it actually will help sustain you from therapy session to therapy session, because you're doing it every single day. You're rolling the die every single day and determining to love every single day, and to get out from any of the anger or any way that you might be upset. Instead, you're choosing to send out love every day. They can find it all at roleoflove.com, ROLE of love.com, and that's where they'll find that special. If your listeners are more the auditory type, if they would like listening to the book, just like they're listening to the podcast, they want to listen to the book, they'll have to go on Amazon. The book is on Amazon. Now, the dice is not on Amazon. The book is. I've done an audible version of the book. Don't type in Roll of Love on Amazon, because you're going to get love this, love that, love a million things, and it's going to be a needle in the haystack. You're not going to find it. Type in my name, Paul Zolman, Zolman, and then you'll come right to it. And then you can choose to download the audible version.
Okay, if I will put those links underneath the video and on the website, so you guys can go ahead and check that out. Make sure you order your book, The Roll of Love. I am definitely going to get it for my kids, and I want to make it a practice that we do. I want to kind of make it at least once a week, because I think this is absolutely needed, especially with them getting so, they're exposed to so much with social media and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is absolutely needed. So I'm going to implement this for every Saturday, because Saturdays we do absolutely nothing here. We turn off things, no work, none of that. So Saturday would be a great day for us to start. I'm going to implement this with my kids. I thank you so much.
Good luck with that. Thank you, Taishandra. It's been a pleasure
Thank
to be
you
with
for joining me. I enjoyed this. This is a good one. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so happy that you came out to talk to the people, and you were able to come and let me just ask you all these questions to get in all your business.
I'm glad to have you in my business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Taishandra.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on the Who God Says podcast with your host and Kingdom Ambassador, Taishandra. Go to whogodsays.com to join the mailing list for episode premieres, upcoming guests, and more. Send in your questions to be a part of the show at whogodsays@gmail.com. And don't forget, join the Kingdom Fanatic community. Until next time, be blessed and also be a blessing.